Okay, it's Georgetta Gancars here, and this time I'm going to show you how to use a different knife. This is the half blade, so you can see the shape is a little bit different. We were using the smaller palette knife in the previous video, and we're going to use this one. So this knife can do a couple of things. We can use the side, and you see how I just put the paint on the side of the edge of that blade, and we can kind of do these lines. Once we do the paint line, we can drag it down a little. We can use a thicker amount of paint, and we can drag it across. If we use a very thick amount of paint, you'll be able to see these lines. I'll show you up close. Okay. The other thing we can do with this is we can press down like we did with the other knife. And we can fade it out. So we get this wonderful texture. And now I'm going to do a little bit of white on top so you can see how that looks. Okay, and we'll do another blue on top. You can see how that looks. And we can keep building it up, okay? We'll do white again. The other thing that we can do is we can go, I'm going to go on top of this color, and it makes these wonderful squares. So I already went on top of the color that we had. And I'm going to clean my knife, and I'm going to do it with white so you can see the difference. I'm just picking up on the edge of the knife. Okay, I'm just going on top. Same kind of thing we did with the other knife. So this is like a press and release where you get all this texture, and this is kind of like this. The other thing we can do is I'm going to scrape all this out now. So just so you can see it one more time, we have all this beautiful texture building up, and then this. So I'm going to scrape this out now. When I scrape it down, I just erase it. See, it's on the back of my knife. And I can also mix the color, dragging it down or across. And I can also dig into it and make these lines. I can also cross hatch it. And make that texture. Okay. I can also scrape like we did with the other knife. And I can move my hand by putting it on the tip and just kind of swirling it out. And I can do this circle or half arch here with one stroke. That's a little bit harder to do with this knife. This knife, you can kind of turn it and do that circle. Okay? The other thing that I can do is I can put another color. I can follow that on top. I can do I just want to show you how to do those edges. Okay? The other thing that I can do is I have a little bit more control when I scrape. The reason this is important is because you don't lose a lot of the paint. You see how you recycle all of that paint on the back of this knife? and you still have a lot of the canvas covered. So it's kind of like you're putting the paint down. With this knife, when we use the smaller knife, look, we put it down, but when we scraped it out, it kind of scraped out everything, right? Where this one, you have a little bit more, but we can scrape it out, but it doesn't scrape it out totally. So this is good for spreading a lot of paint across the canvas and also scraping it out, but we don't waste a lot of paint. The other thing we can do is, I'll show you, I'm going to put yellow on top. So I have a little bit of yellow here. I'm going to lightly drag it on top. And now I'm going to scrape it. I'm going to do another, and I can keep putting that yellow on top and scraping it. And in some areas, it's going to mix with the blue and turn green, and in some areas, it's not. So sometimes students like to do these abstract patterns in the back when they're preparing a canvas because they don't know what's going to happen. I usually tell students to lie down the lightest color first, which would be yellow, and then we can get a green and a blue. But you can still get this kind of abstract kind of shape and color with scraping it and putting colors on top. I'll show you. I'll do it with a red now. Let's use this red so you can see the contrast. Okay, so I'm going to use my half blade again. I'm just going to put it on top, but I'm using, see how I'm dragging the knife down? Okay, so if I drag it down, I can get all these colors on top of each other. Students like to do this when they want to practice something like abstraction. It also looks like a drip flow painting, but you really have to practice. I don't have a lot on the knife. If I press a little bit harder, I get this. So this is where I kind of scraped it out, and this is where I pressed, but I was still using the side of the knife to scrape, but I didn't scrape as hard. And I'll show you, we'll go back on top of it one more time with the yellow to show you how it looks and how you can layer colors. So I really like the half blade because, you know, you can use it as a scraper. It works really well. You don't lose a lot of paint. It stays on the edge of the knife if you want it. You can press down. And you can do these cool, like, kind of abstract paintings. So I'm just putting the yellow. Do you see how I can drag the yellow with the knife? And it doesn't pick up in all places. Just picks up in some places. This one I dragged it down where it's a little thicker. This one I left some spaces in between. I dragged the knife. I didn't press as hard. And here, I didn't press as hard as all. Now I'll show you something. I'm going to clean the back of my knife. Okay, let's put a little bit more yellow here, make it more exciting. Okay, so I'm going to take it off now with here. I'm going to scrape down. And here, I'm just leaving it. And I can keep building up that texture. I can keep putting other things on top, right? So it depends what you want to do. Or I could scrape it out. Now I'm just going to scrape it out just to show you what happens. Okay? And I can scrape it across and get something different. And I could keep building up more colors if I wanted to on top. It depends on what you're going to do. And you can keep changing it. And sometimes students like to do this when they just want to practice. I tell students to do it sometimes with maybe 3 different, if you're doing the primary colors, just to get the control of the knife, to see if you can, you know, skip spaces if you have it all together, or if you can do it like that. And if you can do that with different colors, you really have control over the knife. You can decide if I'm going to dig in the knife, if I'm going to press harder, how am I going to lay those colors. So try something like this. It's a little bit more difficult. Doesn't look anything that spectacular, but it's not of what this looks like. It's the idea, can you keep layering colors on top of each other without losing them and blending them? And can you scrape them out and see them underneath to be transparent? So that's why we do this exercise, like I said. So see how I'm lightly laying it? I'm just dragging it. This one I dragged the knife. When I dragged it through, I got that. And this one I just put on top. Okay? And we start getting all these colors underneath, and they look really beautiful, and we can scrape them out, and we can use the knife again. So try something like this. If you want to try something with abstraction, and you want to try control again, and you want to see how many colors you can lay on top of each other, if you know, you can even take the knife for an example and press it. You'll have these different types of textures. You know, you can use again the side of the knife if you want to. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this knife. So I recommend definitely having a half blade, and definitely having, you know, the smaller knife, and of course a larger palette knife where you can just blend everything together, and it just is an easier, smoother transition, right? But these will give you a little bit more variety in your stroke. Okay, so if I had to choose three knives, I would choose this one, and this one. Then you can choose, you know, there's a lot of other different knives out there that were like this. But the more traditional shape works really well for covering large spaces. This is for small, and I showed you in the other video. And this is the half blade, you know, and I'll show you some more things later to do with the half blade, but try this exercise and see how much control you have and how much color you can keep building on top of each other. Okay, so I'll show you what to do in another video with another knife, and that'll be coming soon. Have a good weekend.